Hello. 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 Hello, my name is Matthew West, and I'm the host of this podcast. It's called the Matthew West Podcast. I really hope you like it.
Hello, his name is Matthew West, and he's the host of this podcast. It's called the Matthew West Podcast. He really hopes you like it.
I really hope you like it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Matthew West Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew West, and almost happy Thanksgiving to you. Thank you for joining me this week. I'm super excited for today's conversation. It's going to get you fired up in a way that only like a football star could fire you up. Just get ready to be coached in the game of life today. That's all I'm going to say for now. But first, I want to remind you, my latest book, Come Home for Christmas, is available right now. Look at that cute little cover. If you're watching on my YouTube channel, you can see it. If you're listening on another platform, you can picture it. It's a cute little book cover. Come Home for Christmas. Jesus is calling you back to the greatest story ever told. I love this book. I loved writing it. And I hope you and your family will love reading it this Christmas season. It's available everywhere that you buy books. Just type it in at Amazon or go to comehomeforchristmas.com, and there's an easy link there where you can buy the book from any resource that you prefer. Comehomeforchristmas.com, and it could be a good little Christmas gift for your friends and family if you want to check it out as well. We've had a blast on the road this fall. We're going to take a brief break for the Thanksgiving holiday, of course. Then we're right back at it with a few Christmas shows, only a few, mostly in the state of Florida because I'm no dummy. We're going to suffer for the Lord in sunny Florida at Christmas time. But hey, I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're having a great week. And if you're not, maybe you're struggling today, guess what? I'm glad you're listening today because today's episode is going to fire you up and inspire you to keep going, to refuse to quit. He's the author of a new children's book called The Won't Quit Kid. And you know what? That's a story that he's lived. He's faced great adversity in his life. He's been a star athlete for much of his life, a 3-time All-American, a first-round draft pick to the NFL. He's faced a lot of adversity in his life, but I think you're going to be inspired by his relationship with the Lord and what God has shown him, and he's doing some great things. So let's go to the Story House right now with an inspiring conversation with my friend David Pollack. Dude, I've been a fan for a long time, so I was super pumped when I heard that we were going to get to talk to each other.
Well, I know you're a bad judge of character already, Homer.
Whatever.
So that's a bad thing.
How you doing today?
Doing good. Just finished. Had a little hour walk with my baby doll. So get on the same page. We need to do that as much as possible in our household.
Dude, I know what that's like. Get your steps in and outside walk. Nice day today or what?
Yeah, it's a nice day. I'm in Georgia. Where are you at?
Nashville.
Okay, so Nashville's beautiful.
Yeah, Nashville's great. Are you in Atlanta?
I am in close, right outside of Athens, really.
Okay, so you stayed. That's where you played college ball, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, right down the road at Georgia. But when I moved back, my mom and daddy, we were raised about an hour west of Athens. But when me and my bride came back after I broke my neck, we were like, yeah, we're not getting that close to mama and daddy. So we moved. We wanted to make sure we lived and cleaved for sure, and got some distance. So we got a little bit of separation, and we moved almost to Athens.
That is awesome. And so are you at the games every home game or what?
No, I started this YouTube channel thing, and I never thought I would do it, Matthew, and I can't tell you that I really love it. I love college football, and I love to watch it, and I love to break it down, but I'm not going to travel anymore. Like, I'm just not. My son's a sophomore. My daughter's a freshman. I coach my son's high school football team. I have for the last 2 years, and I just, like last year I was talking to NBC, and I'm like, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm going to coach every Friday night game. And so this is the kind of way I can still do college football. You actually surprisingly can make money doing it, which I think is absolutely crazy. But I'm going to do the best I can for the next 4 years not to travel.
I love it. I love that commitment. That explains a lot, as I know we're going to talk about your podcast and your kids' book, your children's book, but you're clearly a family man. Hey, start by telling me about the YouTube channel. Tell me about what is the YouTube channel so people can go find it.
Well, it's David Pollack College Football. It's definitely not something I ever envisioned, but it's kind of cool. it's really cool. Once I brought my neighbor, who is a stat nerd geek, writes for Pro Football Focus, like charts all these formations and plays, and like just a coach, like really big geek. He joined me, and we just break down the games. Like we talk about the games, we break them down. Like before the Texas-Georgia game, we were talking about it, and I was telling you why I thought Georgia would win, and because of the matchups. Because I thought Georgia would lose to Bama, but I thought they would beat Texas, and just kind of the matchups of why the matchups happen, and then the reactions, which is the best, by the way, because when you get in a live chat and you got Bama fans that are pissed and Georgia fans and Tennessee fans, like,
Yes.
And you know good and well, Matt, like this is that is a lot of people's religion, and this
Yes.
is passed down from generation.
Yes.
And they are so mad. And if you say anything about their fan base, so it's fun to have the back and forth. And I love college football. I love everything about it. So that's what's fun about it.
So how often are you broadcasting on the YouTube channel? Is it every
I do
day?
it every, it comes out every Thursday morning, and then every Saturday we do post game right after the last game wraps up.
Ooh.
And then it comes out Sunday. So we went over like all the games, all the matchups, and then we have coaches on. Like this week we're going to have my buddy Greg McElroy. Next week we'll probably have Herb Street. Like we're going to start having some of those guys with Reese, and those come on, just share their opinions, talk ball, because they love it as much as I do.
Dude, I mean, you taught me so much. We never even met before, but you taught me so much about football just watching you on TV. Like, you've always been such a great commentator, even after your playing days. But I grew up in Chicago area, and it was more about pro football than college football. So, like, and I went to a school, like a Division III school that didn't have like big. When we wanted to go see big college football, we would go see Illinois play, and they were really bad then, anyways. But like, so when I moved to Nashville, and I realized, how the South treats college football, and of course, I mean, you're a Georgia Bulldog legend, so you've been in this. You grew up in Georgia. You've been around the way the South treats college football. It's their NFL for the most part, wouldn't you? I mean, they're passionate like I've never seen in the Chicago area.
It's crazy because it's really a family affair, and that's what people don't understand. Like, grandparents go with their son and their grandkids.
Yes.
Like, you see that at games, and you see, like, it is literally passed down, and the amount of love that they have for these sports, it's nuts, man. Like, when I got to Georgia and we went through the dog walk. So before the game, you walk through all the crowd and you walk into the stadium. Let me tell you something, Matthew, like, if that don't get your fire lit, your wood is wet, man. Because I'm looking at these people in their eyes and they're like, woo, 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 woo. And I'm like, holy cow. Like, I need to check myself. If they care this much, I dang sure better perform, and I better care. And then you start to learn like traditions and like the songs that are played. And then when I got to travel with game day to all the different traditions, the different campuses, I've seen every campus,
right.
Every major campus in America. And, it's just fun to watch their own twists and their own songs. And, you go to Ohio State, they dot the I. You go to Penn State, the whiteout, like all the different cool traditions across college football that they are so passionate about and they care so much about, and they want to share it with everybody. So they love when new people come in.
Okay, so other than, I'm sure, I mean, your heart belongs to Georgia, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so other than, and you spent 13 years with ESPN, you traveled, like you said, you've seen all the traditions. Best college game day, like, or craziest, best experience, like you just described doing the, at the Georgia games. But aside from Georgia, where have you been where you're like, either as a player or as a commentator, where you're like, this is just another level. This is like nothing you've ever seen before?
I'll give you several. The first one's by far the easiest. Every year we did Army-Navy. And Army-Navy was after the regular season had ended, and it was their own day.
Yes.
But the pageantry will blow your mind. Like, everybody on the field, before the game, going through their routines, like everybody, standing up, everybody in uniform. Like, it just doesn't get any better than that day, because like everybody's on Team America. Now, my Uncle Gus was a 4-star general in the Army, so go Army, beat Navy. Yeah. But it was always, the pageantry of that was crazy. But The college game days when you went to the small campuses, nothing beat it. North Dakota State, like we went and saw the Bison. We were in downtown Fargo, like
Yes.
in the middle of the road. Like everything stopped, the whole town was done, and it was college game day, and then everybody was
Love
there.
it.
And it was cool because they're like, "Thank you so much for coming."
Yeah.
And we're like, "What?" Because you go to certain schools in the South, and they're like, "Yeah, you should be here. This is our game." Like that's kind of what we do.
The
So the
entitlement,
North Dakota
yeah.
States, the James Madison, Virginia Tech was one of the better ones we've ever had. We were on a cargo ship in San Diego. We were on the ship in San Diego. Like we did a lot of really, really cool ones in different spots. But the ones where the fans they thought it would never happen.
Yeah.
They come out in groves and they come out from all over and they're just so jacked up and excited.
That is so cool, man. Gosh, that's incredible. To be able to have that experience, to see that all around the country, both as a player and as a commentator. I want to back up a little bit further. Like, you said you grew up in Georgia. Like, did you dream of being a Georgia Bulldog someday, let alone a 3-time All-American? But, like, was that your dream?
No, man. Like, so I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I moved to Georgia when I was 4.
Okay.
Thank the good Lord, my daddy got a job. We actually followed my daddy's daddy down south, my granddaddy, and we got a job. But when we came down south, my dad always told me, he was like, "Hey, man, we're gonna be a Scarlet Knight." And I was like, "What's a Scarlet Knight, Dad?" Like, Rutgers. And I was like, "No." So thank God we started to get indoctrinated to the South, and my dad was more of an NFL fan.
Yeah.
But my university, the University of Georgia, Matthew, they had the ace in the hole. They had the card that couldn't be beat. When I started my senior year, I started to date my wife, and it's the first girlfriend really I've ever had, and I was not going far away from my baby doll.
Yeah.
So 45 minutes down the road, an hour down the road to Athens,
Yeah.
Georgia.
Yeah.
The best recruiting chip they had, and it wasn't even close. But so I grew to love, obviously, Georgia over the years.
Amazing.
But I definitely didn't grow up going, "Oh, I'm going to Georgia no
Yeah.
matter what."
That's awesome. Did you grow up? Let's talk about your faith story a little bit. Like, I know your faith is the driving force of your life. I've watched you on social media, watch how you lead your life. I know you've got this awesome podcast we're going to talk about called the Family Goals Podcast, and you got a new children's book called The Won't Quit Kid, which as I know, the little I know about your story, I know that comes from a real place, so I'm excited to talk about that a little bit. But did you grow up in like a Christian home, or what age did you start to think about what it looks like to be a follower of Christ?
Yeah, I did not. And I had two of the greatest parents, Norman Kelly, in the world, but they didn't have a relationship with Jesus. And we didn't go to church. And until this day, about 8 months ago is the first time that me and my family have all been in church together.
Cool.
Now we all go to the same church, which is a cool redemptive story. And I could tell you how that story came to fruition later. It's really awesome.
Wow.
But so here's what happened, man. 2 things happened in my life that I always love to share. One, someone invited me. And I say that because we don't all have the power to be a preacher. We don't all have the power to share the gospel and to memorize scripture and to be that guy. And some of y'all don't feel comfortable doing that. So I had a neighbor across the street and like, "Hey man, we're having a lock-in." I was like, "What's a lock-in, bro?" He was like, "We basically have everybody come to the church and we lock you in."
That's high school kind of stuff. Is this high school?
Yes, this is my senior year of high school.
Amazing.
Right before my senior year of high school. And I was like, absolutely not. And then he said the magic words. "You get to play sports all night and stay up all night." In. I was like, in 1,000%. And so I went. And because they invited me, it was the first time I heard about Jesus, and the first seed was planted. Yeah. And then, going into my senior year, that second semester, I also had a teacher named Mark Watson. So I told you, anybody can invite people. Well, anybody can also live their life in a manner in which you go, "That's it, man. That's something different."
Wow.
And that's what Mark Watson did. Mark Watson was a science teacher in a public school. He had a Jesus sticker on his computer. He played praise and worship music before class, never during. But I have a real gift, Matthew, as you can tell. Like, I've always been kind of wound up and had a lot of energy, and I could get underneath anybody's skin. Really good gift. And I could not with Mark Watson. Like, he was so chill and he exuded a peace that surpassed all understanding. And I didn't get it. And I just didn't understand the way he lived his life. And I couldn't frustrate him. So Matthew, before my senior year going in, For outside reading, you have to pick 200 pages of a book to read. And I was like, all right, I want to read the Bible. And I think a big part of me wanted to probably stick it to Mark Watson a little bit and find a way to annoy him. But either way, I was very curious because I had been asked, because I had been shown something different and treated in a different way.
I love that.
And so I started to read, but I told my English teacher, I was like, I want to do the Bible for 200 pages. And she was like, well, you can't do the Bible. I was like, why not? She's like, because I can't sit with you. Like, I don't know the Bible. I was like, well, Mr. Watson can. And I went to Mr. Watson, and Matthew, he said, absolutely, I'll sit down with you. And Mark Watson sat down with me, and he was like, hey, man, start with the Gospels. Start with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I was like, okay. And he was telling me about the different backgrounds of those folks. And obviously, they all had different backgrounds, and it's their accounts of Jesus. And then I got to Acts, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, all these people, had all these miraculous signs, lived with Jesus, did all these great things, and then he dies. Well, what happens next? Well, he appears to him, over 500 people. And then I started to read, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, if this was a lie, every single one of these people that died excruciating deaths would have absolutely gone, no, that ain't true.
Right.
But they just continued to. Why are they continuing to make this stand? And I was curious, and I was hooked. I was
good.
like,
Yeah.
I got to know more. And I read more as a senior in high school of the Bible. I mean, one sentence would have been more than I ever read, but I just read that more than any time in my life.
That's incredible.
And Jesus just grabbed a hold of me. And you talk about like God's timing. And then I go to the University of Georgia, and I have Mark Richt, who's my coach, who loves Jesus. And my daddy, Norm, is the best daddy on the planet. I would not trade Norm for anything. But Mark Richt showed me what a godly dad looked like. He showed me how to lead a family. He showed me how to put God over everything, including sport, and the way he treated people with respect and gentleness and kindness. And like, I soaked it up with a team chaplain and FCA, and God just started to do crazy, crazy things in my life. But it all started, man, with somebody inviting me, and then somebody living a life worth emulating.
That's right off the bat. You're already preaching. I mean, everybody listening to this has already gotten a great encouragement to think about somebody who simply just needs to be invited. I think too many times we think, man, we see the way God uses people in their lives, and we're like, man, I'll never make an impact in the world like that person has. But it's like literally the person that invited David Pollack, a senior in high school, to a lock-in, literally had an eternal impact on your life, on your family, and generation. I mean, that's just a perfect example of the kind of ripple effect our acts of obedience in following God and telling others about him, to know him more, and then to have a desire to make him known to other people. Like that one act, the ripple effect is incredible, and think about guys like Coach Richt, who I got to meet years ago. I mean, how many young men he impacted by showing the example of what it looks like to be a godly man and a godly husband. That's incredible. You were 3-time All-American, which is only 3 more times than I was. But my dream was to be like a college athlete, and like, dude, I would have given anything at the time to be like, I want to go play baseball in college, and never got any offers. And it was like, for me, I've had detours. I find like, so many that we think about God opening doors in our lives to show us his plan for our lives. But a lot of times we discredit other ways that he shows us his plan for our lives is by closing doors, right? And you were facing nothing but open doors in football. You're a gifted athlete, 3-time All-American, drafted first-round draft pick into the NFL, right? Let's talk about, I was watching your Instagram account. You have a pinned part of your testimony, and you talk about 18 years ago what happened. Can we talk about your second year in the NFL and the unforeseen, that you didn't have it planned? You were on a path. Let's talk about what happened in your second year in the NFL.
Yeah, man. Since I was 6 years old, I told anybody that would listen, like, I'm going to play in the NFL. And I got so many of those cool little pats on the head, like, hey, everybody does.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And I tell people all the time, and I tell my kids, man, don't ever let anybody tell you what you can and can't do, because God can do amazing things in your life. And it's a belief I had, and I was going to do it, and I did it. And I got to the NFL in my second season, man, really starting to pick up my new position. Second play, it's a pass play, I think I drop back, and then it's a draw play, so I step up. And one of my main goals was to really learn how to strike people because I played on the line in college. They moved me to linebacker in the NFL, and that was one of my goals. And this is back before you got kicked out of every game when you tried to hit somebody really hard. Like, this is when you could actually really hit people hard.
Right.
And so I went and I struck the running back, man. It's the first time I had this sensation, and it went from my neck, and I've had stingers before, but it went from my neck all the way down to past my waist. And I was trying to move my arms, and I couldn't. And I think we've all woken up in the middle of the night like this, and your arms are asleep, and you're so scared. And it was absolutely scary. And they take you from the field, and then they take you underneath, and they put you right to the MRI machine. I still have my jersey. It's right over there where they cut it off me. They cut my pants off, and they took my pads off. They cut my pads off, and then they put me in the MRI machine, and then they come out, man, and they say, hey, you fractured your C6, C7. Jeez. And I was like, that's cool. Like, what is that, a couple weeks? And they're like, that means you broke your neck. And I was like, ooh, we're going to have to stick to that fractured C6, C7 because that sounds a heck of a lot better than a broken neck. But then the immediate going right from there to the ambulance with my baby doll in the back of the ambulance. And I just remember like it was yesterday, just all the emotions that start to come. And they just start flooding in, man. Like, is this the last chance? Like, is this my last opportunity? Man, I was put on this earth to be a football player. Like, I would have told anybody that. My personality, my big legs and booty, like my energy, like my drive, like I was meant to be a football player. And it was gone like that. And here's what was really, really cool. That's not what I was meant to do. And that's not why I was here. And to get that realization at 21 and to be punched in the mouth at 21, man, I am so grateful because there are some things in our lives that God is going to spare us from 100%.
Wow.
Like the goodness of God, he is going to take us around potholes that exist and come up in our lives. And then, man, there are some things in lives that he's going to have to take us through. And if he doesn't take us through it, we can't learn it any other way. And man, since that moment, I go straight from there to a neck brace. I got a neck brace for a couple months. I got a halo for 4 months, surgery, a neck brace, and a lot of like slowing down. And my personality and go. And I had a good relationship with Jesus. I had a prospering relationship with Jesus. But you know what? I had a one-sided relationship. I talked to Jesus. And I told him what I wanted when it was convenient. Yeah. And I talked to him when it worked in my schedule. And the Bible says, be still and know that I am God. Yeah. I didn't listen to God. I talked to him, but I refused to listen. And I didn't get still enough. And God said, slow down, big fella. And I had 1.5 years plus of slowdown. And I started to learn, man, when I really get still and I talk to him, I'll hear back about my dreams. I'll hear back about what he wants in my life. When I invite him into a meeting every day, like when you invite him into those meetings, he's coming. Yeah. Like he will come into those meetings with you. And so I think it was important to understand that. I think it was important to slow down, to learn how to be still. And when I did, it's amazing how much I started to hear from him. It's amazing how much he started to comfort me. And I also learned just so much about myself. You talk about being I was a better husband immediately. Like my wife moved to Cincinnati and my wife thought like I was great. And she thought she married a football player, Matthew. Well, she got a guy that literally couldn't play anymore. Wow. Like they couldn't take care of himself, that couldn't brush his teeth, that couldn't do nothing for a period of time. And the fact that I saw that my baby doll like just got in a foxhole next to me, man, oh my gosh. Like I knew what was in her heart right away. It made me a better husband. It made me a better dad. It made me a better friend. Like there's so many lessons that I learned. And in the end, man, to wrap it up, we serve a God that is for us. Yeah. In every situation, in everything that comes into our lives. And so some of these situations aren't ideal and aren't what you want. But he's for us, and it's for our good. And if we'll take that attitude into all these different assignments that he gives us in our lives, man, we come out more prosperous and more successful.
I'm smiling because as you're talking, like our stories have some parallels that I didn't quite realize, but even down to the scripture that you just referenced. But I had surgery on my throat, and I thought my singing career was over, and that was a monumental time where I literally couldn't speak, and it was the same epiphany, that same moment of realization that my relationship with the Lord had been largely one-sided, and that I was rarely staying in God's presence long enough to listen. I was only staying long enough to do the talking, and that scripture has to this day is a life verse for me, somebody who's in the business of talking and singing and doing, and you're a doer. You know what I mean? I've never heard you sing, so I don't know if we have that in common. But
nope, we don't.
But,
bro, I don't even sound good in the shower with the radio. I don't sound good with you singing with me in the background, cuz that's how bad of a singer I am.
But the act of being still is not one that comes naturally to guys like us. And but even down to what you just said about your relationship with your wife and how she stuck with you through that. And I remember that hits me. That hits home for me, and I bet that hits close to home for a lot of people who have ever faced adversity only to wind up discovering the closeness of God when we are brokenhearted, the rescue of God when our spirits are crushed, just like the Psalm says, right? He's close to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. Like when we're at our lowest low, when we've just faced the news that we never thought we'd hear and we certainly didn't want to hear, when our life gets completely derailed and the plan we thought was happening ain't going to happen anymore, who is there to meet us? Who's faithful? Who is kind? Who reroutes us? Like you said about the potholes, man, that is powerful. And here you are, like you step into a whole new calling of your life, and you start to realize, because I've heard you speak on TV, on social media, you're bold about your faith, you're bold about your family values. You and your wife have been married for how many years?
20 years in May.
20 years in May, and you've got 2 kids, is that right?
Yep, 16 and 14.
16 and 14, and you said it's been important for you to not be traveling as a commentator, but to be home with your family. Let's talk about your family a little bit, but I want to start by talking about your family with this. You've got this book, a children's book, The Won't Quit Kid. I got to believe that title comes from the story of David Pollack. That's first person, isn't it?
Pretty much, yes. Now, what was really cool about it, Matthew, and you're like this, first of all, I played defense. So defensive guys, you don't assume will ever write a book because we're not the smartest, okay?
Come on.
Here's the account of the amount of smartness you need to play defense. See ball, get ball. Go get it. Like, that's why we don't have plays as much. Like, you go get the football. So I definitely didn't think I would. But, man, after being an athlete, after raising kids and seeing youth league sports and the culture that exists, it's crazy and it's nuts. And I've just seen a lot of, and I've done a lot of, I wish I would have done it different. And so this book comes from that. And instead of kids are parenting from a point of results. So when a kid jumps in the car, Matthew, and your kid jumps in the car and you're like, oh my gosh, that was a great home run. That was a great hit. I think when you do that, you don't do it on purpose. You're just trying to be complimentary of your kids. But when you do that, that's success. You deem success, and we celebrate home runs and hits and touchdowns, as opposed to, man, can we just celebrate the moment and celebrate, hey, you did a great job. You were a great teammate. Did you have fun?
That's
like
good.
I tell my kids all the time, I don't care if you scored 100. I don't care if you didn't score at all. I love watching you compete.
That's
I
awesome.
love watching you on the field. Did you have fun? Did you try as hard as you could? That's all that matters. And so it's about a kid, man, who loves football more than anything. But when he goes out for football, he realizes football ain't easy. And it's really hard, and it hurts, and it's hot. And so, like, teaching the resilient lessons and how to frame a conversation with your kids on stop looking at the stuff that's really, really hard. Quitting isn't an option. Like, we aren't a family that's going to quit. Like, we're going to see things through, and we're going to meet things head on that come our way. But here's how you do it, man. You have it with a good attitude. And like, oh, I'm going to go to try to be a little bit better than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe I can be a little bit better than I was the day before. And so I think that's the premise behind it, to kind of give,
I love it,
parents and kids that kind of idea.
Do you feel like, what do you see like in predominantly in youth, not just in youth sports, but like, do you feel like work ethic looks different these days than it did when you were a kid? I know we could start sounding like our parents now, like back in my day.
Get off my lawn. Yeah,
but like when it comes to perseverance and work ethic, like, I don't know, is it just, kids are on their phones so much. It's just like, I don't know, just feeling like, I sometimes with my daughters, I'll give you an example. Like my kid, I'll be like, hey, I got 2 daughters, and like they want to learn how to play the guitar, but they think instead of taking lessons, I'll just watch a couple YouTube videos or something. It's like you expect to be good immediately just from watching some social media video or something like that. But what's your take on like youth right now and that hurdle of, having a hard work ethic and persevering through obstacles?
Well, I think we're more skilled than ever because we have access to more information. So like they can see drills that major league players are doing and big time guitar players, they can look that up and they have access to that, which I think is cool because information is power.
Yeah.
But I think we've allowed them to quit more and more, and it's okay to quit. And hey, I just want you to be happy. Choose your form of happy. Like that ain't what we're looking for.
Yes.
And listen, in the Pollack household, that's not what we're striving for. Like it's not what makes us happy. Like there is a rule book that God has given us, the Holy Bible, that we are going to live our lives by.
Yes.
And his truth is how we're going to live our lives by. So we're going to do everything with excellence, right? Like that's a part of who we are. That's a part of what we are. Like we're going to love all people. Like Jesus says, love your God and love people. Like, so that means everybody. Like you see that person over there that you think is a little bit of a turd or maybe in your feelings and annoys the mess out of you. God made them and on purpose with a mission, for a mission.
Yeah.
So I do see the next generation. I think it's harder to necessarily communicate with them, and I think it's easier for them to quit. I think they move less outside. They do less, so they're just not as comfortable with a lot of things. They're not as comfortable with being coached hard as our generation was. My gosh, I mean, our generation, you get snatched up in a heartbeat. So I think kids have definitely changed. But I will say this: I think in the heart of it, it's still this. If I can tell a kid nowadays knows that I love them and they know that I care about them, and now what I'll add to this generation is if they know the why. Like our generation, Daddy wants me to go dig a hole. Okay, how big?
Right.
Like now it's why? What's the hole for? Like so many questions. So I think if you can show them like I care about you, I love you, and then and I'm a high school coach. If I can show them I care about them and I love them, and then I can tell them the why. Like this is why we do this. This is why do I coach you hard? I coach you hard because I'm trying to get the best out of you.
That's good.
And try to make you the best you can be down the road, the best father, the best husband. Like so, I think that the generation has changed.
No, that's a really good point. And it sounds like, that's what Coach Richt was doing for you all those years ago too, like showing you the how, but also the why. And he was showing by example, you know what I mean? And because the why is where our faith comes in too, like that greater why of it all, right? Like, why do we do everything we do to the best of our abilities? Well, because God has us here for a reason, for such a time as this, and he has a plan for our lives. And ultimately, that's where so many people, when they don't have a faith that's leading them and grounding them, finding that greater why, you're an aimless wanderer until you realize that there's a God who put you on this earth and he's got a design. He says, I know the plans I have for you, right? So finding that greater why, man, that's what we all need in our lives. I love that. Where can people can get that book? Anywhere, Amazon, everything, right? The Won't Quit Kid.
I think it's Gal. I'm going to get shot because I probably should have this information right next to me, but I think it's davidkids.com.
Davidkids.com.
David's Kid.
Wow. Well, wait, let my team look it up real quick here. My team's going to find out, and we'll be sending them to the right. Trust me, they will find the Won't Quit Kid.
Okay, got it. All right. Here's it. It's davidkidsbook.com.
Davidkidsbook.com. There you go.
You will
and
get
that's
the
where you
Won't
can
Quit Kid.
davidkidsbook.com, and you can pick up the Won't Quit Kid. Real quick, I want to talk about the Family Goals podcast. How often are these episodes going? How many episodes? Once a week, or what do you do? We
are once a week. We drop every Monday. And
you do this with a pastor?
Yeah, I do this with my pastor, Pastor Jay. Kind of a big deal now, Pastor Jay. I absolutely love it. It used to be Jonathan Howes, but once we started the podcast, now we've kind of turned into Pastor Jay because that's what I call him. So I love it's
Pastor
Family
Jay.
Goals with Pastor Jay and me. And listen, we just try to it started because we started in a closet at the church and never thought anything about it. And this was 3 or 4 years ago, and just trying to help families in the busyness. In all the youth league sports craziness and all the craziness of life, to just try to how do we bring it back to the middle, and how do we help them focus? And I'm one of those people, man, when I hear a sermon, it's like drinking through a fire hose, and then I'm like, all right, what's my takeaway? Like, what's my action step? And so, like, teaching you to prioritize and put God first, your bride second. Like, your bride is the next most important. Here's a good analogy that we used on the family goals. Like, when you have a baby, Matthew, they don't come in the passenger seat. They go in the back seat. Like, you put the baby carrier in the back seat, and they're a passenger along with you and your bride. It's that journey with you two that is the most important, that you've got to put first.
That's
and
good.
Like tangible ways to do that, and tangible ways to talk to your kids. And we went through the love language book, and a lot of people do that with their spouse, but it was really cool to do that for our kids.
Yeah, wow.
Like, how does my kid feels love? And my daughter, who's 14 years old now. And like, obviously it gets a little bit weirder with the touching and the hugging, but like, she's a physical touch person.
Yeah.
So I can come beside my baby girl and I can put my hand on her shoulder and still love on her in an unweird way. And so
that's good.
Like, it was a really fun thing, but we go over definitely biblical views of how we should, attack different parts of our lives, and then creating those family goals, man, to help us become, really successful. And because here's the thing, Matthew, alignment affects assignment. If you're not aligned, and like, if I'm going to be a great shooter, Steph Curry, and he's aimed over here, trying to hit over here, it's never going to work.
That's good.
So we've got to get aligned where we want to go. And then we've got to be very, very selfish in the mornings so we can be selfless the rest of the day.
That's good.
Like, you've got to give up time to get with Jesus in the morning, to get with God. And the best thing I ever did was when I got fired, man. It was awesome because I was at home every day. No more travel, no more excuses. I could get up 30 minutes early. I go out to my hot tub. I sit in there for 20 minutes and I listen to God, and I pray, and I listen, and I get still, man. And I've watched him continue to work in my life to when I give him that time, and when I give him my day, and when I start to slowly recap, hey, this is what happened yesterday. Hey, these are my wins. These are my losses. God, I need your help here. Like, this is an area I can tell this continues to be a weakness. But if we don't get still and we don't reflect and we don't get with him, I think a lot of times our alignment isn't the same, and we're not going the direction we want to go. And then we ended up going off course, and we're like, what happened? It's, we got to make sure that our alignment's right.
You just said so many good things. Being selfish. What did you say? Being selfish with our time in the morning.
So you can be selfless the rest of the day.
Man, that is so important. I feel like we're all getting coached up by Coach Pollack today, right here. Like, this is like, you're getting us fired up to run through the tunnel right now, the tunnel of life, and be ready to run our race well. And I mean, but that's awesome stuff, David. Speak to somebody before we part ways today, somebody who's faced unplanned, unwanted adversity like you have in your life 18 years ago. Because what I love right now is, like, I'm hearing you talk and I'm like, dude, this guy is like literally in the middle of like what God's called him to do. Like, he's in his sweet spot. If I never knew that you ever played football, it wouldn't have mattered. I'd sit here talking to you going like, this guy knows his why. He knows what he's doing here, and he's living out his calling, and it has nothing to do with your career as a football player. So I love that, but that had to come with the decision to say, all right, my dream's not coming true the way I thought it would, but I'm not going to quit. I'm going to choose to believe that God has another why for me. So talk to somebody who's listening to this right now, and they're on the front end of that. They're in the shock of something that's derailed them. And maybe it's happened a while ago and they're still struggling to go, well, that was my one and only dream. Now I don't know that my life has any purpose. Give some encouragement to somebody who's thinking about quitting or just doesn't know how to find God's next plan for their life.
Well, I think the biggest thing you can do is, like, a lot of times I think we have this vision, or we see a goal, and this is what I'm supposed to be and this is what I'm supposed to pursue. And I think a lot of times we start to chase it a little bit, and when we start to handle a little bit of adversity or a little bit of failure, we're like, nah, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to do that. And I would argue, bro, with everybody with their cell phone, Matthew, if that thing starts to die, they're running to the wall right now and getting a phone charger and getting that phone plugged back up, man. Don't give up on your dreams. Like, don't give up on what you think you can accomplish. But I will say this, it's going to be daily actions that decide those long-term dreams. And it's not going to be overnight. And we got to take those steps that we can take. And what I've found is when I move in a direction toward where God wants me to go, what I've seen is he'll start to crystallize that vision and he'll start to make it more narrow and more narrow. But I got to do my part. I got to get up, I got to put my boots on, and I got to get walking. And the Bible talks about it all the time. It's a walk with God, right? Like literally, it's a constant process of moving towards him. And I think it can be frustrating. And I think we do have moments. Listen, we're all going to have moments of doubt. But like just like with your faith and your direction, like find people in your life, man, that want the same things, that are chasing the same things. Those people will absolutely help you, guide you in the right direction. But those are people in your life that believe in you, but that believe in something bigger, that will hold you accountable in your actions. And man, I've had some difficult friendships along the way. I'm sure you have, Matthew, too, like where I've had to say goodbye to certain people in my life that like, they don't bring out the best in me. And they're not helping me get where I want to get. They're not making me the best version of me. And those are people that I've got to say goodbye to. So sometimes it's friends, it's situations, it's things we got to say goodbye to. And I would say get in that word, get that guidance, get still, because we like busyness so much that we come home from work and we've been busy all day. And the first thing we do is we click on the TV and because we're addicted to noise and our phone. And so I think, take back some of that stuff in your life and start having that day by day, step by step process of climbing a mountain, which is one step at a time, and don't look at the big picture all the time.
It's awesome, David. I know one of the common themes that you've touched on as you've talked about the different seasons of adversity in your life, with your NFL injury to leaving ESPN, is that you're talking about each one of those situations you said led you to a point where you were spending more time with God and you were doing more listening than talking. And isn't that crazy? It's like sometimes we get so focused on like God's calling for our lives when it's like, I think about, there's a song I wrote with Casting Crowns years ago, and it was like, the idea of the song was like, man, all you've ever wanted, God, was my heart. Like just that realization that like, man, I'm so focused on what your plan for my life is when you're calling me to you. You want to be with me. You like a father wants to be with his child. Like you want to be with your kids. Like you said about your kids, you just love seeing them on the field. You don't care if they won or lost. Like, my desire with my kids is just to be with them. Especially now, I got a freshman in college and I was
18 summers. I'm sure that was written about her.
Exactly. And I was hesitant on whether or not to tell you, that she chose to go to University of Tennessee instead of Georgia. But man, if she called me right now, I would end this interview, no offense to you, but just because like, I just want to hear the sound of my kid's voice. And I think about our Heavenly Father, man, how much does it give the Father joy to hear the voice of his child? Like when you come to him, Lord, I'm disappointed with this that didn't happen. Lord, I want to spend time with you today. Lord, I'm going to be selfish with my time in the morning so I can be selfish the rest. It gives him great joy. That's what he wants. He cares about our character. He cares about our heart. He cares about making us more and more like him. The rest is just details. And so I think that's just a great reminder that you're giving to myself and everybody listening today. I'm inspired by your story of overcoming adversity. I love how you've turned it at every turn. You're turning it into a message and realizing that, man, God takes these things that happen in our lives and he uses them in a way that only he could do, and then only he gets the credit for it. So I want to encourage everybody to go pick up The Won't Quit Kid. It's a kid's book, but man, maybe there's an adult out there that just needs to read that and learn about persevering too. And then check out the podcast, the Family Goals podcast. That's available everywhere that people listen to podcasts, and your YouTube channel to get the best football education you could get from Coach Pollack, dude. You're awesome, man. I'm so glad that we've had a chance to connect today, man. I'm thankful for you.
No, thankful for you too, man. Obviously, there is nothing that in my life that touches me more and that affects my walk more than guys like you that do what you do. Like every Sunday in church, I got tears in my eyes from praise and worship. Like that is my thing with God. And so the fact that you get to do that, man, and bring great songs, it brings great joy. I can tell you to our family, because that's all we got going in the car
that's awesome,
is praise and worship all the time. And you help us grow closer to God. So thank you, man.
Man, well, thanks for saying that. I'm so glad that I'll be able to have you on the show, and let's stay in touch. All right, man?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
He's my dad, and he gives good advice, and that's why our last segment of the show is called Dadvice. Here's his theme song.
He is my dad, and he gives good advice. And that's why this segment is called Dadvice.
All right, Dad, thanks for joining me today. I know you've been listening to my new album a lot, so I have a feeling today's Dadvice, like the others, has something to do with one of the songs off of the new Don't Stop Praying album.
I think you guessed right. And the song is God's Hands. What an awesome song.
God's Hand, singular.
God's Hand.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
had hands. Sorry.
Yeah.
God's Hand. Yes. Well, he has two hands.
He does. He does have two hands.
Okay, here we go. I've seen miracles no earthly explanation can explain. Signs and wonders I don't understand. My story's got his fingerprints on every single page. A good quote here. Did you know that God's hands are mentioned over 160 times in the Bible? From creation to miracles to moments of comfort, he uses his hand to perform wonders for us all. Here are just three things God's hand means for you and me. One, God's hand protects us. Matthew's testimony of your testimony of God's protection at the beginning of that song was the inspiration for it.
That's right. Yeah.
In Psalm 138:77, though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand. With your right hand, you save me. Great verses. 2, God's hand directs us. Psalm 139:10. Even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand will hold me. And then thirdly, God's hand strengthens us. Psalm 41:10, I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Another good quote. To say we are in God's hand, or that a situation is in God's hand, is a declaration of total surrender. We are in God's hands, or put your situation in God's hand, you relinquish control and place your trust in his plans. My Dadvice today, let's focus on God's hand and be grateful that in God's hands we are held protected, strengthened, directed, and cared for. He loves us so much that our names are engraved on the palms of his hand. And I love this verse, Isaiah 49:16. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. See, I have written your name on the palms of my hands, always in my mind. If we leave everything in God's hand, we will actually see God's hand in everything.
I like that. That's good, Dad. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening today. I want to thank my guest, David Pollack. Be sure to pick up a copy as you head to the holidays. Maybe you think of a kiddo in your life who could be encouraged by the inspiring message of his book, The Won't Quit Kid. Go check that out. And be sure to listen to his podcast, the Family Goals podcast as well. He's got a lot of great stuff going on. But, I'm just inspired by it. Here's a guy who watched one dream go away, and he dared to believe that God had another dream in store for him, a greater one at that. Pretty cool stuff. David Pollack, what an inspiration to all of us. Hopefully an encouragement to you. Whatever it is you're going through, don't quit. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Be selfish with your time in the morning. Spend time with God so that you can be selfless the rest of the day. That will preach. Thanks to David for that. All right, go make the most of the one life you get. And remember, it's your story for his glory. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.